let's talk about the cell. As you may know, the cell is the structural and functional unit of a living being. That means that all living beings and us humans are made of cells. The cell has several characteristics such as being complex and highly organized, possesses the ability to replicate, obtains energy, and interacts with the environment. There are two types of cells, prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are characterized by being unicellular and lacking of a nucleus. There are two categories of prokaryotic cells, bacteria and archaea. Let me show you the parts of the prokaryotic cell. First, the capsule. This is the outer covering of the cell. Then the cell wall is an outer covering that gives it shape. Then the cytoplasm is a gel-like substance that contains enzymes and salt. Next, we have the cell membrane. The membrane surrounds the cell cytoplasm and regulates the flow of substances. Then the pili, which are hair-like structures of the surface of the cell. Next, we have the ribosomes, which are responsible for protein production. Then the plasmids, which carry the DNA. Finally, the nucleus, which is the area of cytoplasm that contains the single bacterial DNA molecule. Now let's move on to the eukaryotic cells. They are much more complex than prokaryotic cells. Then prokaryotic cells divided into animals and plant cells. Let's move on to animal cells. The animal cell is composed by centrioles, which are organelles that help organizing the cell division. Next, the cilia and flagella. They are essential for the locomotion of individual organisms. Then, the endoplasmic reticulum, which processes and transports chemical compounds for use inside and outside the cell. Then, the endocytosis that reverses what occurred during exocytosis or cellular secretion. Next, the Golgi apparatus that distributes and shapes the department for the cell's chemical products. Then we have the mitochondria, which converts oxygen and nutrients into energy. Next, the nucleus that stores the DNA and coordinates the cells. The plant cell is composed by the same organelles, except that it does not have centrosome, lysosome, nor centrioles, but it does have some organelles that the animal cell does not, like a central backbone and chloroplast.
Theories of living beings. Living beings have several essential characteristics in common. 1. Cellular organization. Everyone is made up of cells, from single-celled bacteria to multicellular organisms like humans. 2. Metabolism. They obtain energy and use it to perform vital functions such as respiration or photosynthesis. 3. Homeostasis. They maintain a stable internal balance, regulating temperature, pH, and other factors. 4. Growth and development. They go through changes throughout their life, increasing in size and maturing. Reproduction. They multiply to ensure the continuity of their species, sexuality or asexual. 6. Response to stimuli. They detect and react to changes in their environment, such as light or heat. 7. Evolution and adaptation. Over time, species change and adapt to environment to survive. Difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Living beings are made up of cells that can be of two types, prokaryotes or eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells. They are smaller and simple. They don't have a nucleus, so their DNA is dispersed in the cytoplasm. They lack membranous organelles. They are typical of bacteria and archaea. Eukaryotic cells. They are larger and more complex. They have a well-defined nucleus where the DNA is found. They have membranous organelles such as mitochondria and the endoplasmic reticulum. They are found in plants, animals, fungi, and protists.
To understand the history of the microscope, the cell, and the cell theory, we have to make a question. Like, who invented the microscope, and how did every person that contributed help to make the cell theory? The microscope was invented in the late 16th century by Dutch spade makers, including Hans Janssen and his son Zacharias. In the early 17th century, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, a Dutch tradesman, used his crafted microscope to observe microorganisms, including bacteria and protists. In 1665, Robert Hooke, an English natural philosopher, used a microscope to observe scar tissue and discovered the cells. The cell theory, which states that all living organisms are composed of cells, was developed in the 19th century by Matthias Jakob Schneider, Theodor Schwann, and Rudolf Virchow. The story of the microscope, the cell, and the cell theory is a story of scientific discovery and innovation that has shaped our understandings of the living organisms that surround us in the world. And that's why we have to appreciate and try to understand all the investigations that these people made to make this theory that basically tells us the origin of all life.
Forms of cell transport, which are passive, active transport, osmosis, diffusion, facilitate diffusion, and endocytosis and exocytosis. But first of all, cell transport is the process of moving substances across a cell membrane. Substances can move in or out of the cell. The cell membrane is semi-permeable, meaning it controls which molecules and ions can enter or leave the cell. For example, passive transport moves substances across a membrane without using energies, while active transport moves substances across a membrane against the concentration gradient using energy. Another example is osmosis, is a type of diffusion that moves water molecules across a membrane. Another one is diffusion, is a process where particles move from a region of high concentration to a low one. And another example is facilitated diffusion, is a type of diffusion that uses proteins to help molecules move around across a membrane. Another example is endocytosis. It's a process where a cell brings substances into the cell by engulfing them in a vesicle. And exocytosis is a process where a cell moves large molecules out of the cell. Well, as I already said, cell transport is really important since it helps maintain homeostasis within cells, tissues, organ systems, and homeostasis allows organisms to stay alive and healthy. Now, on to the next topic.
Before you begin to study the different structures and functions of the human body, it is helpful to consider its basic architecture, that is, how its smallest parts are assembled into larger structures. It is convenient to consider the structures of the body in terms of fundamental levels of organization, those that increase in complexity, like subatomic particles, atoms, organ. To study the chemical and level of organization, scientists consider the simplest building blocks of matter, like subatomic particles, atoms, and molecules. All matter in the universe is composed of one or more unique pure substance called elements. Familiar examples of which are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, calcium, and iron. The smallest units of any of these pure substance is an atom. Atoms are made up of substance particles such as the proton, electron, and neutron. Two or more atoms combine to form of molecules, such as the water molecules, proteins, and sugars that are found in living beings. Molecules are the chemical building blocks of all body structures. To the information, a cell is the smallest independently functioning unit of a living organism. Even bacteria, which are extremely small, independently living beings, have a cellular structure. Each bacterium is a single cell that are all living structures of human anatomy contain a cell, and almost all functions of human psychology, and they are performed in cells and initiated by cells.
Nowadays, teenagers can face many health risks. One of them are Pregnancy. In Latin America, the number of pregnancies is increasing, which indicates that something is failed in the education system about sexuality and reproductive health management. At an early age in Mexico, half of the adolescents who begin their sexual life have an unwanted pregnancy. In adolescents, boys, the most common causes are: I didn't know about the conceptive methods, where to get them or how to use them. I didn't plan to have sex. I wanted to get pregnant, and I don't think I could get pregnant. Addictions. Drugs artificially trigger excessive dopamine release, creating temporary euphoria but leading to tolerance and reduced natural dopamine production. Over time, this weakens the brain's and reward system, making it harder to experience pleasure naturally. In addition to affection pleasure, drugs also impair memory, learning, emotions, concentration, and decision making. Prolonged use of certain substances can result in an irreversible mental disorders. These neurological changes can make it extremely difficult for addicted individuals to stop using drugs even when they want to. And obesity. In Mexico, the most obese country in the world, almost 60% of the state's inhabitants are obese or overweight. Beyond the well-known diseases associated with these conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension, which are, by the way, the leading causes of death in the country. During adolescence, eating habits change to increasing autonomy and social influences, often leading to unhealthy choices like sugary drinks and high-fat foods. However, biological changes require more micronutrients for proper development. A healthy diet should include legumes, vegetables, fruits, and proteins. And the adolescents need to minimizing sugary and carbonated drinks. The key challenge is recognizing bad habits and making conscious and nutritious choices.